So we'll be looking at what do we mean by depreciation. Are we together now? We'll be looking at definition of depreciation. So let's look at definition of depreciation. You can agree with me that depreciation is the gradual or the decrease in the value of non-current assets. In the value of non-current assets. That's what we mean by depreciation. That means as an asset, the amount in which an asset or the process in which an asset reduces in value is called depreciation. So that's what we mean by depreciation. Depreciation is the decrease in the economic life decrease in the economic value of a non-current asset. So we know that we don't depreciate current assets, and I told you that we have two types of current assets, two types of non-current assets rather, or two classification of non-current assets. We have tangible assets and intangible assets. Are we together now? We have tangible and intangible assets. And if you remember vividly, when you say the word intangible, it means an asset that can be seen, feel, or touch. Example of intangible assets is land, building, property, equipment, machinery, plants, motor vehicles. Example of intangible assets. Why or the example of tangible assets? Why intangible assets are assets that you cannot see or touch? That's what we mean by intangible assets. That means you depreciate tangible assets. Tangible assets are depreciated. That means the gradual decrease in the value of, or the decrease in the economic of tangible assets is called depreciation. And we have what we call intangible assets. Intangible assets are amortized. Amortized. That means amortization. Why this is depreciation? So you don't call the decrease in the value of economic value in the decrease in the economic value of intangible assets is called amortization, but decrease in the value of, or in the economic value of tangible assets is called depreciation. Depreciation. Am I communicating? It is called depreciation. So let's continue now. Now we have, if you want to determine the cost, of intangible, of non-current assets, if you want to determine the value of current assets, that means the current asset is measured at cost. That means you can use cost. And when you say cost in accounting, cost does not just mean how much you purchase that item. It does not mean the purchase price. It means the purchase price and every other cost that is incurred to bring the asset to the condition and location necessary for use is what made up a cost. So you can buy an equipment now. You can buy a generator for 100,000, but the cost of installing it may be 10,000. The cost of transporting it may be 5,000. So if they ask you how much is the cost of that generator, it will be the purchase price plus the installation cost, which is 10,000 plus the transportation cost of transporting it to where you will need it. So the cost will be 115,000. That's how cost is determined for non-current assets. So non-current assets, when you want to determine the component of cost of non-current assets, is not only just the purchase price. That means the purchase price, the tax or the tax or the duties, that means the importation duties that you pay on that asset, is also part of the cost of the asset. The direct cost, that means installation, transportation, that is related to bringing the asset to the condition and location necessary for use, is also part of the cost. Are we together now? If you purchase if you purchase a land now and you need to clear the bush on that land now, the cost of preparing or clearing that bush is also part of the cost of that land now. So the initial measurement of an asset is cost. So the initial measurement of a non-current asset, are we together now? The initial measurement of non-current assets is what? Is cost. And I've told you the component of cost now is cost. So let's look at what we know as the difference between capital and revenue expenditure. So let's look at the difference between capital versus revenue expenditure. That means you are saying the difference between capital and revenue expenditure. You know, expenditure is expenses. So what is capital expenditure? So capital expenditure refers to the fund or the cost incurred for the purchase of non-current assets. For the purchase of non-current assets, meaning that an asset that you can use more than 12 months is example of capital expenditure. So capital expenditure now, if they ask you, example of capital expenditure is the cost of a building. Are we together now? Cost of a building, the cost of buying a land, the cost of buying an equipment is called capital expenditure. That means the expenditure you will incur on non-current assets. And when we say non-current asset, it means an asset that can be used more than a year. And an asset that can be used more than a year is refers to as long-term investments. Are we together now? So now, what do we mean by revenue expenditure? Revenue expenditure are the expenditure you incur in the day-to-day running of the organization or of the business now. The day running of the business. Example of that now, fueling cost. Give me one example apart from fueling cost that is under revenue expenditure. Ma, what other? I know you are a business.
Miscellaneous.
Which miscellaneous? Miscellaneous is broad. Which miscellaneous?
Okay, you mentioned fueling. What about transportation?
That means transportation cost, right?
Transportation cost, maybe to go and buy the fuel.
Yes, fueling cost, transport. What about salary and wages? You know that.
Okay, you're day to day.
Yes, now. Okay, if you don't go to the office every day or throughout a month, will they pay your salary?
No.
Yes, now. That means revenue expenditure is the expenditure that is incurred. Are we together now? That is incurred in the day-to-day running of the organization now. That means you need to pay people salary. You need to pay fueling. You need to pay for electricity. That means if you don't pay it, the operation of the business won't go on. Are we together now? Unlike capital expenditure is just for you to purchase a non-current asset. That means is used to purchase an asset that can be used more than, or an investment that would be used more than a year. That's what we mean by capital. When they say government is doing capital projects, what do you think they are doing? Constructing roads, constructing what's it called, schools, building hospitals that they can be used for a long period of time. That's what we mean by capital expenditure. But revenue expenditure, government pays salary every month. That means capital expenditure can be one-off. It is not something that is routine. It's not done regularly. In ODRS now, can I ask you a question? Is it every month or every year that ODRS buys bus, or build land, or buy land, or build tax station? Is it every year that they do that? No. So that's what we call capital expenditure. Is one-off. It's not routine. But revenue expenditure now, is it not every month that they pay for fueling costs? They pay interest to the station managers. They pay the fueling. They fuel the car. They pay salary. So that means that's revenue expenditure. Are we together now? The expenditure that is incurred on the day-to-day running of the organization. Are we together now? Because if you don't incur this expenditure, if you don't incur this revenue expenditure, there's not how money will comes in. Are you, like, you are running a business now, you don't pay people salary, you are not fueling the cars, you are not doing anything. Will money comes in? No. So that's what we mean by. So example of revenue expenditure is salary, wages, marketing, advertisement. You get what I'm saying now? Cost of traveling, entertainment. Their example, repairs. The example of capital expenditure. So let's look at the difference now. You can go to your page 72. You will see the difference there. They said the focus. They said capital expenditure, it focus on long-term expenditure. It focus on long-term expenditure. Are we together now? Why revenue expenditure focus on short-term expenditure? That means expenditure that is within a year. Why capital expenditure focus on expenditure that is long-term expenditure. They said the purpose of capital expenditure is to improve productivity, because when you buy machine, when you buy cars, when you build a structure, what are you doing? You are trying to improve productivity. Why revenue expenditure is to maintain current operational efficiency. That's the essence of revenue expenditure. Why duration? I told us that capital expenditure is more than a year. That means it's more than a year. The benefits of capital expenditure is more than a year. You can use an asset for 10 years, 5 years, 50 years. Why revenue expenditure is a short term, within a year. Is a short term, meaning that it's not possible you pay salary for the whole year. That means if I work for a month now, you pay me my salary. That's the duration. That means the duration of revenue expenditure is within a year. It's not more than a year now. So you can look at some other example of capital and revenue expenditure. So let's go to, we have defined depreciation now. So let's look at causes of depreciation. I told us that depreciation is the decrease in the economic value of non-current assets. And I told you that we have two types of non-current assets. We have tangible and intangible assets. That when the value of intangible assets decreases, is called depreciation. Reduce is called depreciation. And when the value of intangible assets reduces, is called amortization. Are we together now? An example of intangible asset is land, building, equipment, property, furniture and fitting. They are example of tangible asset. That means asset that you can see, feel, and touch. Now, intangible assets are assets that you cannot see, feel, or touch. That means that's what we call intangible assets. An example of intangible assets are patent rights, license, trademark, copyright. Their example, trade secrets. Their example, software is an example of intangible assets. And intangible assets, the gradual decrease in the value or the decrease in the economic value of intangible assets is called amortization. So let's look at the causes of depreciation now. What causes the value of intangible assets, or what causes the value of tangible assets to reduce now? So depreciation, we want to look at causes of depreciation. What causes depreciation? One thing that can cause depreciation is we call physical factor. Physical factor. Physical factor. You can agree with me that an asset can decay. Are we together now? Physical factor. Let me give an example now. While growing up, all these deep freezer, all these fridge. By the time you are using it and water is pouring by the side, what happened to that side now? You see that it will be decaying, it will be rusting. Now, that's what we call physical factors. Like if flood should happen now, if rain should fall on a particular asset now, what happened to the asset? The asset will begin to rot and get damaged. Are we together? That physical factors can cause decrease in the value of an asset. What about wear and tear? When you use an asset, when you begin to use an asset, just like you using a particular cloth now, what happen? The colors will begin to tear because you are using it on a regular basis. That means if you are using a generator or a car, when you use it frequently, what happen? The value of that car will also reduce by the usage over the period. Now it begins to decrease. What about passage of time? Passage of time, even though you didn't use an asset, you just park it. Let's say you just park an asset in a place now, maybe a car, and you are not using it again. Now, if you are not using it again, does not mean that the value will not depreciate. Because if you buy an asset 5 years ago now, that means what we are saying is that the passage of time can make an asset to decrease now. We make an asset to decrease. Passage of time can also cause an asset to decrease. Now, inadequacy. Inadequacy is when the asset is not producing the output that the firm require now. That means that's inadequacy. They say assets may be out of use because of increase in the output of a firm now. That means a firm now, they have increased their output. So that asset now, maybe that small generator they are using now, they will sometimes just abandon it because it does not serve their purpose now, because their capacity of the firm has become increased. So that asset will now be it can cause their asset to depreciate when the asset is inadequacy. When an asset is exhausted, when an asset is exhausted, it can also cause the depreciation. What about lack of maintenance? Lack of maintenance can also cause an asset to depreciate. So let's go to the method of calculating depreciation now. We have several methods of calculating depreciation. So method of calculating depreciation. We have different method of calculating depreciation now. Now we have what we call straight line method. We have what we call reducing balance method. We have what we call sum of the year digits method. We have what we call annuity method. We have what we call sinking fund method. We have what we call revaluation method. We have what we call machine hour method, and we have annuity method. So we have about, I think, That should be 7 or 8. 8 method of calculating depreciation. But for the sake of this of calculation now, we'll be only be looking at 3. We'll be looking at straight line method, reducing lines method, and sum of the year digits method now. Sum of the year digits method. So let's go to straight line method now. Straight line method, when you hear the word straight line, it means that the annual depreciation for their asset remain the same throughout the year. That means if the annual depreciation is 20,000 in year 1, the annual depreciation will be 20,000 in year 2, will be 20,000 in year 3, till the asset is fully written off. That's what we call straight line. That means the depreciation or the annual depreciation does not increase or decrease. It remains constant throughout the lifespan of that asset now. That's what we call straight line method. So let's go to straight line method now. So I'll be wiping the board now. We'll go to straight line method. Method of calculating depreciation. We have straight line method, and I've explained what straight line method is now. So how do you calculate the annual depreciation now in straight line method? The annual depreciation, when calculating annual depreciation, the formula is as follows now. I'm writing it on the board now. We have cost minus scrap value, or you call it residual value. It can also be called residual value or salvage value over useful life. Are we together now? This is how you calculate your depreciation. That means the cost of the asset and the scrap value. What do you call scrap value or residual value? There are some assets, after, let's say the useful life is 5 years. After you have used it for 5 years, you can still sell it for a little amount of money. Like cylinders now. The cylinder, maybe you have used it and there's leakages. You can still sell it to all these condemned aluminium people that used to buy condemned things now. You can still sell it. That's the scrap value. That's what we call scrap value. That means when an asset has been fully used, what the amount at which that asset can still be disposed, that's what we call scrap value or residual value or salvage value. So let's look at this question in our material now. So they said, in this our material, they said a cost of a motor car is 4,000. The scrap value is estimated as 100 naira, while the estimated useful life is 4 years. Then I say we should calculate the annual depreciation. So from this question, the cost of that asset is 4,000 naira. The scrap value is 100 naira. The useful life is 4 years. Now I want to calculate the annual depreciation, and I've told us that annual depreciation is cost minus scrap value divided by useful life. So what's the cost? So annual depreciation is as follows now. The cost is how much? 4,000 naira, while the scrap value is 100 naira, divided by 4. So 4,000 minus 100 naira will give you 3,900. So 3,900 divided by 4. What do we have? 3,000 divided by 4. What do we have? It will give us 975 naira. 975 naira. That means that is the annual depreciation. That means the value of the asset will be depreciating by 975 naira every year. Are we together now? Am I communicating? Am I communicating?
Yes, sir.
Now, if you know that the value of an asset will be decreasing by 975,000 naira every year, that means you can agree with me that when the asset is fully written off at the end of year 5 now let's look at it now. Let's look at this question. Let's look at this now. Let's now calculate the carrying amount of the asset at the end of year 3 now. The carrying amount of, is it motor car? Yes, of the motor car after 3 years. After 3 years, maybe at the end of 3 years now. So to calculate carrying amount, CA, carrying amount, what's the formula, or what is the formula for calculating carrying amount? It is cost minus what? Minus accumulated depreciation. And what do you mean by accumulated depreciation? It is the depreciation that has happened from when the asset was purchased till when you are calculating the carrying amount. Look at this now. That means the accumulated depreciation will be from year 1 to what? To year 3. In this question now, that will be the accumulated. If it's for 2 years now, they said you should calculate the carrying amount at the end of year 2. That means the accumulated depreciation will be from year 1 to year 2. Now, if it's only at the end of year 1 now, the accumulated depreciation will only be for year 1. But if it's for 4 years now, the accumulated depreciation will be comprises of the accumulated depreciation, the depreciation from year 1 to year 4. That means 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's look at this question now. They say we should calculate the accumulated depreciation after year what? 3. So that means the carrying amount is now equals to, what's the cost? 4,000 minus accumulated depreciation. They said the value of the asset will be depreciating by how much? 975. So it will be 975 in 3 places, because it will be 975 in year 1, 975 in year 2, 975 in year 3. So times 3 years. That will give us how much? That will give us how much? So accumulated depreciation is now 975 times 3 years. So 975 times 3, because you use it for year 1 to year 2, that will be the accumulated depreciation. It will be 2,925. So remove 2,925 from 4,000. So the carrying amount of the asset will now be 1,075 naira. So let's move forward now. Let's look at the second method. The reducing balance method is of the opinion that as the value of the asset is decreasing, the depreciation, the annual depreciation, should also be what? Decreasing now. Are we together now? As the value of that asset is depreciating, whatever asset, when you are using reducing balance method, that means the annual depreciation of that asset should also what? Depreciate. And that's what the concept of reducing balance method. In other words, you can say that it is the first year that we have the highest depreciation rate, that we have the highest depreciation amount. That means the annual depreciation for year 1 will be the highest, while the annual depreciation for year 2 will reduce, because the value of the asset could have reduced because you have removed the depreciation in year 1 from it now. Am I communicating now? Am I communicating?
Yes,
Now,
understand
reducing balance method is saying that the value of depreciation, the annual depreciation will not be the same thing throughout the year. It's not like the other straight line method where the depreciation will be, let's say it's 2,000 in year 1, the annual depreciation will be 2,000 in year 2, will be 2,000 in year 3. It's the same thing. But in reducing balance method, the annual depreciation in each of the year is different. Are we together now? So that means the earliest year we have the highest depreciation rate. You may not get it now. So let's solve a question on that so you understand what I'm trying to say. Am I communicating? You understand what I'm trying to say? Now, if you are given reducing balance method, if you are to calculate the annual depreciation under reducing balance method is as follows. It will be the depreciation rate. That means they have to give you depreciation rate. If they don't give you, times the opening balance. The opening balance of the carrying amount. Are we together now? So now if you are to calculate the annual depreciation now, you know it's not like straight line method that you say cost minus scrap value divided by useful life. This one is saying if you are using reducing balance method, the annual depreciation will be depreciation rate times the opening balance. The opening balance. Let's do it like this. Opening carrying amount of the asset. That's how it should be. Don't let me tab on. It will be opening carrying amount of the asset. That means the opening carrying amount of the asset, you multiply by it. Now, how do you now calculate? In some question, they will give you the depreciation rate. They can say the depreciation rate is 25% every 25%, 20%, 30%. But if they don't give you, this is how to calculate the depreciation rate. So depreciation rate, I've seen in one past question, they will not ask you to calculate it. They will just tell you that which of this is correct, which of this is used, which of these following is used to calculate depreciation rate in straight line method. So they will give you different formula. The wrong one, the right one will be there. So you should know the right one to use. Are we together now? You will know the right one. So now depreciation rate can be calculated as follows. Are we together now? Can be calculated as follows. It will be 1 minus n square root of s over c. Are we getting times what? Times 100. Your 100 can either be in front or back. That one does not. So what is your n? Your n is your useful life. The useful life of the asset. S is the scrap value. While C is the cost of the asset. Am I communicating now? Is the cost of the asset. So let's look at this question. Illustration 2.3 in page 77. Illustration 2.3 in page 77. They say a machine costing 20,000 naira is deemed to have a 6 years life and a scrap value of 5,240 at the end of the useful life. They say calculate the depreciation for the machine for each of the useful life of 6 years now. So that means you are not giving. So to calculate the annual depreciation now is called depreciation rate times the opening carrying amount of the asset. But we don't know the depreciation rate now. So let's calculate the depreciation rate using this formula. It will be 1 minus, what's the number of years? They say it's 6 years. The scrap value is 5,000 240. Why the cost is 20,000 times 100. Am I communicating? Now, if you press this in your calculator, it will give you, are we together now? If you press this in your calculator, this will give you 1 minus the cube root raised to power 6 divided by 5,240 divided by 20 should give you 0.8, approximately 0.8 times 100. So 0.8 times 100. That means 0.1 minus 0.8 should give you 0.2 times 100, because the rate is expressed in percentage. So that means that will give you 20%. That will give you 20%. Now let's calculate our annual depreciation for each of the year. Let's calculate our annual depreciation for each of the year now. Am I communicating? So let's calculate our annual depreciation for each of the year. Now let's go to, now the cost of the asset is, how much? Is 20,000, right? Now what's the depreciation rate? The depreciation rate that we have calculated is 20%, right? So that means, so the depreciation rate is at what? 20%. The depreciation is at 20%. So 20% of the opening, in year one now, what's the opening balance of the carrying amount? Is 20,000 naira. So 20% of 20,000 naira is what? So that will give you 4,000. That means the depreciation now, the annual depreciation at year one now, at year one is 4,000. Am I communicating?
Yes.
The annual depreciation, I shorten this view. It should be annual depreciation. I just shorten it, or should I just write it full? But you get what I'm saying now. This means annual depreciation. Am I communicating? Okay, let me write it in full, because students sometimes. So we have cost. So the cost Oyekonra is 20,000 naira, and that will be the opening balance in year one. So the annual depreciation now, I shorten it, at 20% in year one is what? Is 20% times what? 20,000. That will give us 4,000. So, and don't forget, what is carrying amount? That means the carrying amount in year one now will be what? Will be cost minus annual depreciation. What's the annual depreciation? 4,000. That will be 16,000. So 16,000 is the carrying amount. Carrying amount at year what? Year one. So at year one. So let's go to year two now. So year two, what happen? You calculate the annual depreciation now. Annual depreciation in year two at what? 20% in year two. And the annual depreciation will be what? Will be 20% times what? The opening carrying amount of the asset in year two. What's the opening carrying amount of the asset in year two? 16,000. So times 16,000. So that will give us what? I think that will give us 3,200. So that will be 3,200. And that will give us how much? That will give us 12,800. So this 12,800 will be the carrying amount at what? at year 2. That means at the end of year 2.
Sorry, how do you arrive at 12,800?
Only 16,000 minus 3,200.
Àmọ́ bí a ti lo 16,000 yẹn tẹ́lẹ̀ ni.
No. Hey, guess why? Ẹ jẹ́ kí explain concept fún yín báyìí. Please let me pause. That what I was explaining earlier now is clearer. What is the annual depreciation in year 1? 4,000. In year 2, how much is it? 3,200. Is it the same? That means as the asset is reducing in value, what happens? The depreciation or the annual depreciation is also what? Reducing. So the annual depreciation now at year 3 now will now be what? 20% times what? 12,800. Because they said if you want to calculate the depreciation rate, it will be depreciation rate times the opening balance, the opening carrying amount of the asset. What's the opening carrying amount of the asset at year 3? Is 12,800. So that will give us how much? That will give us how much? That will give us 10. That will give us 2,560. So if you remove it from the opening balance, you will have 10,240. That will be the carrying amount at year what?
Year 3.
Year 3. So that's how you'll be doing it. So that's how you'll be doing it, man. So that's reducing balance method. You can see what happened to the annual depreciation in year 3 is now 2,560. That means as the value of the asset is reducing, the depreciation rate will be reducing. You can tell me now, you can now see clearly that year 1 will always have the highest annual depreciation. What's the annual depreciation in year 1? What's the annual depreciation in year 1? 4,000. Can you see? Does anybody match year 1? Does any of the year match year 1? No. So that means as the asset is reducing, so the depreciation rate will also be reducing. So that's what's it called? That's it also follow the same principle as reducing balance method. That means the depreciation can be the same thing for throughout the year. That means the depreciation in year 1 will be different from the depreciation in year 2. And it believes that this concept of reducing balance method means the earliest year should be the one that will have the highest depreciation rate. That means the highest depreciation value or the annual depreciation for year 1 will be the highest. That means as the value of the asset is reducing, what happens? The depreciation also what? Reducing. So they have the same concept with reducing balance method. So they may ask you that you should calculate what's it called? Sum of the year digits. So the formula, that means if you are calculating this now, you will need to calculate the sum of year digits. So let me just write it. Sum of year digits. So in your exam, they can ask you that what is the sum of year digits for year 7? So sum of the year digits. Now, if they ask you to calculate what the sum of the year digits, let's say the useful life of the asset is 5 years. What I say, the useful life of the asset is 5 years, and they say what is the sum of the year digits? So it will be 5. You start from 5. 5 plus what? 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1. What would that give you? 5 plus 4. That's 9. 9 plus 3. That's 12. 12 plus 2. That's 14. 14. That's 15. That means the sum of the year digits is 15. Now the question If it's 6 years now, you start from 6. It will be 6 plus 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1. If it is 10 years, it will be 10 plus 9 plus 8. That's how you count it till you get to 1. But the question will be, if the useful life of the asset is 100 years, will you be counting it like that? So there's a formula for sum of the year digit method. And that formula, instead of you doing like this, if you use the formula, you will still have the same answer. So the formula is n bracket n plus 1 raised to power, raised to power 2. Are we together now? I say raised to power 2 divided by 2. Divided by 2. And I've eaten. So n yes, ma. Thank you, ma. N bracket n plus 1 close bracket divided by 2. What is the n? Now you should know that the n is the number of useful life, the useful life of the asset. The number of the useful life of the asset. That means the number of the useful life is the n. Now in this question now, I told us that the useful life is 5 years now, and they ask you to calculate the sum of the year digits. You don't want to do it like this. What's n? What's n? If the useful life of the asset is 5 years, what's n? Hello?
Yes, I'm with you. What's n?
N is 5. So if n is 5, that means n, interpreting this formula now, it will now be 5 bracket 5, because n plus what? 1 divided by what? 2. That means 5 plus 1, 6. So 6 now, 5 times 6, because when you open the bracket, it's 5 times 6. It will give us what? 30. So 30 divided by 2, that will give us 15. So the sum of the year is now what? Is 15. You can either follow this or follow this, but it's appropriate if the year if the year is like 30 years now, will you follow this? No. It's not possible. No. You follow this in the exam. You have to be 30 plus 29 plus So just do this one, you will get the answer directly. Am I communicating now? Yes. So let's now look at this. I know you are tired. Let's look at this question. Illustration 2.4 in page 78. Page 78. We want to use sum of the year digits method now. Now let's solve the question. They said a company purchased a machine costing 20,000 naira and has a useful life of 6 years. So what's the cost? The cost of this asset is 20,000. The useful life. The useful life is 6 years. They now say we should calculate the annual depreciation using sum of the year digits method. Now it's quite simple. Am I communicating? It's quite simple. So how do we calculate the annual depreciation using sum of the year digits method now? So first thing is for you to look for the sum of the year digits. And sum of the year digits, I say you can use n equals to what? N bracket n plus 1 divided by what? 2. Divided by 2. So what's n? 6. So 6 bracket 6 plus 1 divided by 2. 6 plus 1, that's 7. 7 times 6, that should be 42. 42 divided by 2, that should be 21, I mean. That should be 21. Yes, 21. Now let's now calculate the annual depreciation. Now since you know the sum of the year digits, let's calculate the annual depreciation. Now for year 1 now for you to calculate the annual depreciation now, when you have an asset in year 1, how many years? You know the useful life is 6 years. When you have an asset in year 1, how many years do you have to use that asset? That means it's 6 years. That means year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6. That's 6 years. So the number of years that you use that asset for at the beginning of year 1 is what? Is 6 years. Divided by what? Divided by sum of the year digits. What is the sum of the year digits? 21. Are we together now? 21. Multiply by the cost. What is the cost of the asset? 20,000. So 6 divided by 21 times 20 will give you what?
5,750.
Will give us what do you call it?
5,716.
5,716. Now let's go to year 2 now. You will repeat the same thing too in year 2. Now, if you count from year 2, how many number of years do you have to use the asset? Year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6. That's how many years? From year 2 to year 6, that's how many years?
5 years.
5 years. So it will be 5 over 21. The 21 will not stop. Times what? The cost. What's the cost?
20,000.
20,000. That will give you what? That means this is the annual depreciation now for year 1, and the annual depreciation for year 2 will be 4,762. You can see now. You can see now. Look at year 1. What's the annual depreciation in year 1? It's 5,716. But in year 2 now, it is 4,762. That means the depreciation. That means as you are using the asset, what happens? The depreciation rate is also what? Reducing. So year 3. So I will only stop in year 3. It will be how many years from year 3 to year 6? How many years do you have to use the asset? That's 4 years. That will be 4 over 21 times 20,000. That will give us what? That will give us 3,000. 809. Okay, if you approximate it. Now, I want to ask us now, if you use some of the year digits method now, and they now ask you that you should calculate the carrying amount in year 3, in year 2, how will you calculate it? The carrying amount in year 2, carrying amount in year at the end of year 2, how will you do? So that means the cost, which is 20,000, the accumulated depreciation will be, because they say at the end of year 2, it will be the depreciation that has happened in year 1 and year 2. So you will need to add it together. That's what we mean by accumulated depreciation. When you add it together, you have this 10,478 now. You remove it from it, you will get, so this 9,522 will be the carrying amount. Are we together now?
So if you have to calculate to year 3.
Yes, you will add. Yes.
To add from year 1 to year 3.
Yes. So that means how the accumulated depreciation will be arrived at different method now will be different. You know, in straight line method, you don't even need to the carrying amount. You don't need to be getting the accumulated depreciation. That means just be as you are removing what's it called? As you are removing the depreciation from it, you will be getting the carrying amount. Are we together now? The straight line method can calculate lecoin. It does not follow like this. Are you getting what I'm saying? Because that cost, once in your kúrò already. Are we together? So what I will do is that for us to understand it better, I will give us an assignment on what we have done, on the calculation we have done so far. So once I give us assignment, that assignment will be past question. So